When Jacob saw Rachel, the daughter of Laban, his uncle, and the flock of Laban, Jacob came up, rolled the stone from the well's opening, and watered the flock of his uncle Laban. Jacob kissed Rachel and wept aloud. Jacob told Rachel that he was related to her father and that he was Rebekah's son. She then ran to tell her father. Genesis 29:10-12. May God add his blessing to the reading, hearing, and understanding of Scripture. Thanks be to God. Good morning, church, and happy 4th of July. And welcome to our time together of word, message, and prayer. I hope you're all having a great long holiday weekend and that you're doing something fun today. Today we're going to continue our look into the life of our charismatic character of the Old Testament, Jacob, and, well, his messy life. Last week we talked about his messy beginning of life, and today we're going to discuss his messy middle of life. And man, there is a lot to cover, so let's jump right in. So we left Jacob last week after he'd had a dream and met with God on top of a ladder, which was really symbolic for linking heaven to earth. And we learned how that inspiring and hope-filled text was so much so that it became a basis for the song "We Are Climbing Jacob's Ladder," heard in many of VBS, but was also sung by African Americans during the Civil War as a reminder of God's love even during this awful, awful time. Today, we find that Jacob has arrived at his grandfather Abraham's hometown, and he comes here in order to find himself a wife. And wouldn't you know, like his father Isaac, Jacob, while walking into town, finds the woman he wants to marry standing out by the well. And her name is Rachel. Our text tells us that while Jacob was looking at the sheep, he saw a girl standing by the well. Now, this well during this period of time was likely a field well for sheep, meaning it was level with the ground. And in order to keep people from falling in, they had a really large stone that would cover the well. And it's a stone that typically required many men to move them so that they could water all the sheep. But when Jacob sees Rachel standing there right next to it, he runs over, and before you know it, he personally rolled the stone away all by himself. I love this. I love how the stone was rolled away by Jacob. But he really wasn't all by himself. We know that he had the help of a heavenly hand. I mean, what a great foreshadow story of another large stone that we know of, which was rolled away by a heavenly hand, the one that was rolled away after Jesus' death and resurrection. I also love that they met at a well. Some scholars say it was the same well as his parents met at, and some scholars disagree with that. Jacob's well, which is what this well became known as, was eventually the same well that Jesus will come to meet the Samaritan woman. The same woman Jesus had the most dialogue with than any other character in the New Testament, and one who would go on to spread the good news to an entire nation. I love this tie back and forth between the Old and New Testaments, and I love the idea of the visual, the using of living water as a way to talk about God's love in this incredibly dry and arid land. And so Jacob agrees to go to work for Rachel's father, Laban, who also happens to be his uncle. In order to win over Laban, Jacob agrees to work for 7 years in exchange for her hand in marriage, and thus begins a series of tricks and deceit between Jacob and Laban, enough that today would allow you to make an entire miniseries of it. As the story plays out, we learn that Laban deceives Jacob into accidentally marrying his older sister, Leah. Laban starts by saying, "Okay, Jacob, you can't work for nothing. What will your wages be?" I mean, can you imagine being asked by your boss how much you want to get paid for doing your job? What a concept. And so they agree. They agree on a wage, and they agree that Jacob must work 7 more years to be allowed to marry Rachel. After 7 years had come and gone, Jacob goes up to Laban and he says, "Okay, give me my wife so that I may go." Laban was like, "Okay." And he gathers everyone together, as was their tradition, and They had a great evening, again, as was their tradition. But then, instead of bringing Rachel to Jacob's bed that night, which again was their tradition, he brings him Leah, Rachel's sister. In other words, Jacob is tricked just like his father was in a similar deception in last week's story, and he ends up spending the night with Leah, so they're technically married. The next morning, Jacob goes to Laban and is like, "What did you do? Why did you not bring me Rachel?" Laban's response was, "Look, in this land, the oldest goes first, and if you want my youngest, then you need to work another 7 years." Well, our Jacob was in love, and so he agrees to work for another 7 years. And in exchange, he's given Rachel and her maid, Bilhah. So Jacob now has 2 wives and a maid, and so you think all would be pretty good. Not so much. You see, God saw that Leah was disparaged because Jacob loved Rachel more. Because of this, God gave sons to Leah. The firstborn was named Reuben, then Simeon, and then Levi and Judah. When Rachel realized that she could not give Jacob a son herself, she became jealous of her sister, and so she took her servant Bilhah to bear children for her. And just like that, then she had 2 sons, Dan and Naphtali. Leah, in response to this, did the same thing with her maid, named Zilpah, who quickly conceived and gave Jacob 2 more sons, Gad and Asher. After time passed, Leah became pregnant again and had Issachar and then Zebulun and a daughter who was named Dinah. And even more time passed, God showed pity for Rachel and finally allowed her to have a son, who she named Joseph. 12 sons. These, of course, being the 12 sons that God makes into the 12 tribes of Israel. So after all of these kids are born, Jacob goes to Laban and says, "Will you allow me to return to Canaan, to the land where my parents live?" But Laban begs him, No, please stay. Thanks to you, the Lord has blessed me. Just tell me what you want for a salary and I will pay you that much. Just tell me, what do you want me to pay you so you'll stay? So our beloved Jacob was like, "Okay, well, here's the deal. You don't have to pay me anything. If you accept what I'm about to propose, I will continue to care for your sheep and your flock, but only if you'll set aside for me all of the sheep and goats that are striped, spotted, or speckled. That will be my salary. The rest of the sheep and goats will be yours." And Laban accepted the offer. From that day on, many animals were added to Jacob's flock. Jacob's animals continued to multiply, while Laban's animals were weak and did not grow in the same way. In other words, Jacob prospered greatly and eventually came to have many herds. He also had many male and female servants, as well as camels and donkeys. God had truly blessed Jacob and his family. The sons of Laban, however, were not very happy with this. Jacob discovered that they were going around saying Jacob had been taking over everything that belonged to their father and has grown rich at his expense. Jacob also noted that Laban was no longer treating him the same way. And so God told Jacob, "It's time for you to return to the land of your parents, and fear not, I'll be with you." So Jacob agreed. It was time to return. He told Leah and Rachel everything that had happened, and they responded with, "We really no longer have anything here either, not even the inheritance of our father's house. Our father treats us as if we were foreigners. Therefore, we're in. Let's do this. Everything that God has ordered you to do, let's do it." So without saying anything, not a word to Laban, together with his wives and his children and his flocks, they head off for Canaan. After 3 days, Laban was informed that Jacob had escaped, and so he gathered his family members and chased him for 7 days until they arrived to the mountains of Gilead. That night, God said to Laban, "Be careful with what you say to Jacob. Be careful." The following day, Jacob saw that Laban and his men had caught up with him. He was scared and worried because he knew that Laban was not very happy with him. But when they finally met, Laban asked Jacob, "Why did you flee like this? Why did you just go without saying anything to me? You have my daughters and my grandchildren. You didn't even give me the chance to say goodbye to them. I would have gladly said goodbye. Laban went on to say, you know, I have the power to hurt you, but last night your father's God spoke to me and told me to be careful with what I say to you. And so I am. But I need to ask you, why did you do that? Why did you leave? Jacob responded with, the truth is that I was very scared because I thought you could take away my wives and my children by force. Laban, I have served you for 20 years and I have always been a faithful worker. During this entire time, I've cared for the animals diligently. I never complained about my job, even when I was consumed in the heat during the day or dying of cold at night. And I couldn't even sleep. Out of the 20 years I was there, 14 of those I served for your daughters, and 6 for your livestock. During all that time, you've changed my pay many times. However, God was with me. If I hadn't had God, if he hadn't been with me that whole time, you probably would have fired me and left me nothing. But God knows how hard I have worked for you. That is why he spoke to you last night. Laban responded to him, Jacob, regardless, everything that you have received has been because of me, my daughters, my grandchildren, and the animals. But it wouldn't be right for me to take them from you. Let's make a peace treaty. And Jacob accepted. And so both families piled up a heap of stones. This pile of stones, declared Laban, will serve as proof that neither you nor I will cross this line with the intention of hurting one another. Do no harm. The God of Abraham will be our judge, and Jacob swore to it. The following morning, Laban said goodbye to his daughters and grandchildren and returned to his home, and Jacob continued his path toward the land of his family. It all ended well. But wow, what a story. What a story. With all of this trickery and deceit, it makes me wonder why would God make the fathers of these 12 tribes be these 12 kids? All of these kids and the story that came about through such morally dicey means. I believe it's to show us something incredibly important about our human conditioning and to show us what forgiveness looks like, what reconciliation can look like, and also who God is and how he works. Here's the thing. God keeps his promises. He keeps his blessings of us. It's just that simple. He works through us all to make all things happen. God promised Abraham's father that he would become a great nation, and by hook or by crook, here we now have the beginning of just that. You see, friends, this story is one that teaches us that no matter what happens in the world or how messed up we may have made it, God will accomplish his plans. He has got you covered. That just when you think you can't handle anymore, God will get you through it. You were never meant to do life alone, ever. No matter your story, you too will find God repurposing evil intentions and show mercy to people who don't deserve it, to do good, to reconcile, to create covenant together, and experience love and grace. Loving God, we give thanks to you for these ancient stories, ones that are filled with wisdom and that have been told for generations of your promise to love us, guide us, and work through us, no matter how hard we try to mess it all up. We give thanks, God, to you. Amen. And that's a wrap, church. I hope you all have an amazing 4th of July weekend. If you're in Plumas County and you want to come to church this morning, we would love to have you there. It starts at 10:30. Come and join us for a cup of coffee and grab some cookies. Next week is an entirely normal week. We have a load of activities happening. You're welcome to go out to our website, which is scrolling down below now, which will give you a list of what those activities are. If you would like to sign up for a music camp that we have coming up for kids in August, it also is out on our website. And if you'd like to contribute in any way to help continue our word, message, and prayer, you're welcome to do that online too. Again, the QR code is in front of you, or it will be on our website as well. And so have a great, safe 4th of July. Gentle Winds Church.